A human being can become a ghost, a living weapon. In the blood-soaked fields of Eastern Europe, amidst the thunder of artillery and the shriek of dying men, one woman hunted. She moved through the ruins of cities and the silence of frozen forests, a phantom armed with a rifle. This was the brutal reality of the Second World War, a conflict that demanded impossible things from ordinary people. For Lyudmila Pavlichenko, the demand was to become the most successful female sniper in history. Her story is not just about the grim calculus of war. It is a testament to the iron will that can be forged in the heart of a quiet, scholarly woman, and how that will could turn the tide of terror. One single, perfectly aimed shot at a time. The world remembers the roar of tanks, the drone of bombers, the grand strategies of generals played out across entire continents. But history is also written in whispers. It is written in the patient, measured breath of a hunter waiting for their prey. It is written in the silence between heartbeats, in that infinitesimal moment before the trigger is pulled. Before she was a legend, before she was a symbol of Soviet resistance whispered in fear by German soldiers, Lyudmila Pavlichenko was a girl who loved books. She was born in a small town in Ukraine, a daughter of the revolution, raised with the belief that a woman could be anything she chose to be: a factory worker, a scholar, a soldier. Her spirit was fierce, her mind sharp. She was a student of history at Kiev University, her world one of dusty libraries and passionate debates about the past. She dreamed of shaping young minds, of teaching, of a life built on knowledge, not on conflict. But the winds of war were gathering. In the Soviet Union of the 1930s, the storm was palpable. Every citizen was expected to be ready. Civilian life was interwoven with military preparedness, a society holding its collective breath. Paramilitary sports were not just a hobby, they were a civic duty. Young Lyudmila, the historian, found an unlikely passion in one of these clubs. She discovered the quiet, focused world of the shooting range. There was a unique clarity in it, a sense of control that appealed to her analytical mind. It was a world of physics and discipline, the gentle curve of the earth, the subtle push of the wind, the precise mechanics of the rifle. It was a problem to be solved, a puzzle of deadly geometry. She excelled, her natural talent honed by relentless practice. She earned her Voroshilov sharpshooter badge, a mark of distinction. But for her, it was still a sport, a skill, not a calling. The scent of gunpowder was the smell of competition, not of death. The cold metal of the rifle was a tool for precision, not a harbinger of doom. All of that changed on June 22, 1941. Operation Barbarossa. The German war machine, a beast of unimaginable power, tore across the Soviet border. The sky burned. The earth trembled. The life Lyudmila had known, the future she had planned, was incinerated in the opening salvo of the most brutal conflict in human history. When the news reached her, the scholar's quiet determination morphed into a cold, hard resolve. This was not a distant historical event to be studied later. This was an invasion of her home. Her people were being slaughtered. Her land was being scorched. She walked into the recruiting office in Odessa, a university student with bright eyes and a sharpshooter's badge. She was among the first wave of volunteers, but the recruiters almost turned her away. They saw a woman, and they offered her the role of a nurse, a helper. They saw her as someone to mend the wounds of war, not to inflict them. Lyudmila refused. Her gaze was unflinching. She was not there to bandage soldiers. She was there to make them. She presented her credentials, her awards for marksmanship. She insisted. She demanded her right to fight. There was a fire in her that the recruiters could not ignore, a conviction that was as potent as any weapon. Reluctantly, they assigned her to the Red Army's 25th Rifle Division. They handed her a rifle, not the finely tuned target rifle she was used to, but a Mosin Nagant M1891 Tran 30. It was a simple, rugged, brutally effective weapon. 5 rounds in the magazine, a bolt-action mechanism that was almost unbreakable, and an effective range that could reach out and touch an enemy from over half a mile away. It was heavy, the wooden stock worn smooth by other hands, the steel barrel smelling of oil and cordite. This was no longer a tool for sport. This was an instrument of death. And in her hands, it would become an instrument of legend. Her first days at the front were a baptism by fire. The reality of combat was a chaotic, terrifying assault on the senses. The air was thick with the stench of mud, sweat, and fear. The constant, deafening noise of explosions and machine gun fire was a physical presence, a pressure that squeezed the air from your lungs. It was nothing like the calm, controlled environment of the shooting range. Here, the targets were not paper silhouettes. They were men who were actively trying to kill you. Her first kill was a moment of profound, terrible transformation. She hesitated. The scholar within her recoiled. The part of her that valued human life, that had studied the grand sweep of history, understood the weight of this single, irreversible act. But beside her, a young comrade fell, his life extinguished in an instant. In that moment, the hesitation vanished, replaced by a chilling clarity. The men on the other side of the field were not just soldiers, they were invaders. They were the force that had shattered her world, that was burning her home. She raised her rifle, found her target, controlled her breathing, and squeezed the trigger. 2 of them fell. The historian was gone. The hunter was born. The defense of Odessa was a desperate, brutal affair. The city was surrounded, besieged by a relentless enemy. Every street, every building, every pile of rubble was a battlefield. It was here, in the crucible of urban warfare, that Lyudmila began to build her reputation. Sniping is a lonely art. It is a game of patience, of absolute stillness, of supreme self-control. While battles raged around her, Lyudmila would find her nest, a bombed-out apartment, a factory rooftop, a trench hidden in plain sight. She would remain motionless for hours, sometimes for days, enduring heat, cold, hunger, and the constant threat of discovery. Her world shrank to the view through her scope, a tiny magnified circle of death. She learned the rhythms of the battlefield, the habits of the enemy. She learned to read the landscape, to see the subtle signs that betrayed a hidden position. A wisp of smoke, a glint of metal, the careless movement of a shadow. These were the clues that led to a kill. She was not just a marksman. She was a psychologist. She understood that her true weapon was not just the bullet, but the fear that traveled with it. A single unseen sniper could paralyze an entire platoon. A well-aimed shot could eliminate a commander, a machine gunner, a radio operator, disrupting the enemy's ability to fight. Her presence on the battlefield became a chilling whisper among the German and Romanian troops. They began to fear the silence more than the noise. Every shadow, every window, every pile of debris could hold the Lady Death, as they came to call her. Her reputation grew with her tally. By the time the Red Army was forced to evacuate Odessa by sea, her official count stood at 187. She was no longer just a soldier. She was becoming a symbol. If this story of a woman who defied expectations and faced down the world's most terrifying army resonates with you, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. There are countless stories of courage like this one, waiting to be told, and by joining us, you help bring them to light. From Odessa, Lyudmila and her unit were redeployed to another, even more critical battle, the siege of Sevastopol. This was a fortress city on the Crimean Peninsula, a vital strategic port on the Black Sea. Its defense was a matter of national survival. Here, the fighting was even more intense, the conditions even more hellish. The landscape was a churned-up wasteland of craters and twisted metal. The fighting was often at close quarters, a desperate struggle for every inch of ground. For a sniper, this environment was a paradox, rich with hiding places, but also fraught with constant danger. The enemy was everywhere. Lyudmila's skills were honed to a razor's edge. She engaged in deadly duels with enemy snipers, a high-stakes chess match where the slightest mistake meant instant death. These were not simply tests of marksmanship. They were battles of wits, of patience, and of nerve. She would spend days stalking a single high-value target. Another sniper who was just as skilled, just as patient, and just as determined as she was. She learned to create decoys, to use the sun and shadows to her advantage, to wait for that one fractional moment of carelessness from her opponent. One such duel lasted for 3 agonizing days. She and a German sniper ace hunted each other through the ruins of a factory. They were ghosts in the same machine, each aware of the other's presence, each laying intricate traps. The psychological pressure was immense. Every sound, every movement could be the last. Lyudmila finally caught him. He made a single, tiny error, a brief glint from his scope as he shifted position. It was all she needed. That single shot ended the duel and added another notch to her rifle stock. By her own account, she bested 36 enemy snipers in these lethal contests. The psychological toll of this kind of warfare is difficult to fathom. To live for months on end with the sole purpose of ending human lives, to see the world through a telescopic sight, to know your targets as individuals in their final moments, it requires a compartmentalization of the soul that few can maintain. Lyudmila was wounded 4 times. Shrapnel from mortar fire left her concussed and bleeding, but each time she returned to the front as soon as she was able. The physical pain was secondary to the mental fortitude required to do her job. She had to suppress her empathy, her fear, her exhaustion. She had to become the weapon. She spoke later of the internal struggle, of the coldness she had to cultivate. It was not hatred that drove her, she would claim, but a fierce, protective love for her country and her people. She was a defender, an executioner of an invading force. Each kill was a small act of liberation, a strike against the darkness that threatened to consume her world. Her life at the front was not one of complete isolation. She found camaraderie and even love amidst the chaos. She fought alongside her comrades, sharing rations, enduring the same hardships. She met a fellow sniper, a man named Alexei Kitsenko. They became a team, a deadly partnership that fought side by side. They planned their missions together, watched over each other, and in the shared crucible of war, they fell in love. They made plans for a future after the war, a dream of a peaceful life that seemed almost impossibly distant. But the war took him from her. Alexei was mortally wounded by a mortar shell, dying in her arms. This personal loss, this intimate encounter with the random cruelty of war, hardened her resolve even further. The fight became even more personal. The cold professional soldier now carried a burning ember of grief. By June of 1942, after nearly a year of relentless fighting, Lyudmila's official confirmed kill count had risen to 309. This staggering number, which likely did not include many unconfirmed kills, made her not only the most successful female sniper in history, but one of the most effective snipers, male or female, of the entire war. But her body and mind were paying the price. During a fierce artillery barrage, she was struck by shrapnel in the face. The wound was serious. Her commanders, realizing her immense value as a symbol of Soviet resistance, made a critical decision. She was too valuable to lose. Her war at the front was over. She was evacuated from the besieged city of Sevastopol by submarine just weeks before it finally fell to the Germans. Her journey was far from over. It was simply transforming. The Soviet government knew they had more than just a soldier in Lyudmila Pavlichenko. They had a hero, a living legend whose story could galvanize support for the war effort, not just at home, but abroad. She was sent on a publicity tour to the Allied nations, the United States, Canada, and Great Britain. It was a surreal transition. One moment, she was living in muddy trenches, hunting men in the ruins of a city. The next, she was in a world of clean clothes, press conferences, and diplomatic receptions. She was a curiosity, a phenomenon, a woman sniper. When she arrived in the United States, she was met with a bewildering mix of fascination and condescension. The American press was obsessed with her appearance. They asked her about her uniform, commenting that the drab olive fabric made her look fat. They asked if she wore makeup on the front line. They were more interested in her as a woman than as a soldier. One of the reporters criticized my uniform, she would later recall. He said that in America, women wear short skirts, and besides, my uniform made me look fat. Lyudmila, a woman who had faced down death itself, was not intimidated by their trivial questions. Her responses were blunt, direct, and cutting. "I wear my uniform with honor," she told them. "It has the Order of Lenin on it. It has been covered with blood in battle. It is plain to see that with American women, what is important is whether they wear silk underwear under their uniforms. What the uniform stands for, they have yet to learn." Her frustration grew. She felt that the Americans did not understand the urgency, the sheer brutality of the war on the Eastern Front. They were fighting a different kind of war, far from their shores. She was there to ask for their help, to plead for them to open a second front in Europe, to relieve the immense pressure on the Soviet Union. She found an unlikely ally and friend in the First Lady, Eleanor Roosevelt. Mrs. Roosevelt saw past the uniform and the legend. She saw the woman. She saw the quiet strength, the intelligence, and the deep-seated pain. She invited Lyudmila to tour the country with her, providing her with a platform to speak directly to the American people. The story of Lyudmila and Alexei, a love forged and lost in the fires of war, reminds us of the deeply personal sacrifices made by so many. It's a reminder that history is not just about numbers and dates, but about human hearts. If you've ever been moved by a story of love and loss, let us know in the comments below. Your own stories and reflections are part of this shared history. Traveling across the country, Lyudmila's voice grew stronger, more confident. She shed the initial reticence and began to speak with a raw, powerful honesty that captivated her audiences. In a famous speech in Chicago, she finally let her frustration show. Facing a crowd of thousands, she delivered a speech that would become legendary. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice ringing with an authority born of experience. "I am 25 years old and I have killed 309 fascist invaders by now. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" The crowd, which had been cheering politely, was stunned into silence and then erupted into a roar of applause. She had finally broken through. She had made them understand. She was not a novelty. She was a warrior, a messenger from the heart of the inferno, and she was demanding that they listen. Her tour was a success. While it's impossible to measure its direct impact on military strategy, her presence undoubtedly helped to humanize the Soviet struggle in the eyes of the American public. She put a face to the staggering statistics of the Eastern Front. She was a powerful piece of propaganda, but she was also genuine. Her words carried the weight of truth, the authority of someone who had looked the enemy in the eye and pulled the trigger. Upon her return to the Soviet Union, she was not sent back to the front. She was promoted to the rank of major and made an instructor, training a new generation of snipers. Her knowledge, her experience, her almost preternatural understanding of the art of sniping was now passed on to hundreds of young soldiers who would follow in her footsteps. She was shaping the future of Soviet sniping, ensuring that her legacy would be carried on by others. When the war finally ended, when the guns fell silent and a shattered world began to tentatively rebuild, Lyudmila Pavlichenko had to find a new way to live. The transition from soldier to civilian is never easy, and for someone who had experienced the intensity of combat as she had, it was a profound challenge. The skills that had kept her alive for so long, the hypervigilance, the ability to detach emotionally, the instinct to hunt, were no longer needed. She had to learn how to live in a world without a telescopic sight. She returned to her first love, history. She completed her degree at Kiev University. The woman who had made so much history now dedicated her life to studying it. She worked as a research assistant at the chief HQ of the Soviet Navy, her life becoming one of quiet scholarship. But she was never able to fully escape her past. She was a living legend, a hero of the Soviet Union. She suffered from post-traumatic stress, from the ghosts of the men she had killed, from the loss of her comrades, and the love of her life. The war had left invisible scars that would never fully heal. She was haunted by the memories, by the constant echo of gunfire in the quiet of her mind. Yet, she carried her burden with the same quiet dignity and strength she had displayed on the battlefield. She continued to be a public figure, active in the Soviet Committee of War Veterans, a frequent speaker who reminded new generations of the sacrifices that had been made. Her friendship with Eleanor Roosevelt endured, a testament to the bond forged between two powerful women from vastly different worlds. They met again after the war, a reunion of old friends who had shared a unique moment in history. Lyudmila Pavlichenko died in 1974, at the age of 58. Her health had been broken by the wounds and the stress of her wartime experiences. She was laid to rest with full military honors, a hero to the end. But her story did not end with her death. Her legacy is not just in the number 309. It is in the symbol she became. She shattered stereotypes. She proved that courage, skill, and deadly determination are not the exclusive domain of men. She was a student who became a soldier who became a legend, and a legend who reminded the world that the most effective weapons are often forged in the most unlikely of hearts. Her story is a stark reminder of the brutal necessities of war, but also of the incredible capacity of the human spirit to endure, to adapt, and to fight for what it holds dear. She was not a monster. She was not a soulless killer. She was a woman defending her home in the only way she knew how. She was a product of her time, a patriot who answered her nation's call with unparalleled skill and unwavering resolve. Her life is a complex tapestry woven with threads of intellect, violence, love, and loss. She was Lady Death to her enemies, a hero to her people, and at her core, a woman who was forced by history to become a living weapon. Her quiet, patient vigil in the ruins of forgotten battles stands as a timeless monument. It is a monument to the idea that in the face of overwhelming darkness, a single determined individual, armed with a rifle and an unbreakable will, can indeed become a ghost who haunts the memory of tyrants and inspires the spirit of resistance for generations to come. The story of Lyudmila Pavlichenko is a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. If her journey from student to soldier, from defender to legend has inspired you, please share this story with others. By sharing these histories of courage, we keep the memory of their sacrifices alive and honor the strength that lies within us all.